Kicked out my husband's sister and family for being messy in my home. Now the whole family is fighting outside our house. My husband has 2 brothers and 1 sister. His sister and her husband are not my favorite people in the world. Recently they have been couch surfing as they lost their home, long story which could have been avoided if they had adulted like they should have. First, they stayed with my in-laws but they used the excuse that my Phil has diabetes to get rid of them and their rowdy children. Next was his older brother and his wife. They had 2 spare rooms as 2 of their older children moved out a year ago and they only have the 6-year-old and their 13-year-old twins at home. After 3 weeks they had to move out due to a planned refurbishment. They were happy with them as they were generally tidy and helped out in the home. The youngest brother was the next to take them in. While my Sil was there she helped out in the home and kept her children on a leash. The youngest brother's wife is very house proud, and she allowed them to stay for a limited time only as they have had a baby recently and her mother will be staying with them to help out for the first 6 months. Then they emotionally manipulated my husband to say okay. I agreed to it on the condition that she and her husband as well as their children keep the place clean because in the past the only place they are messy in is my home. For example, if they are throwing something into the kitchen bin, they will throw it in the general direction of it and not in the actual bin. It's extra gross when it's food stuff that dries up and stinks out the place. Similar things happened in the past where she would leave her sanitary towels on top of the bin lid in the bathroom instead of in the bin. Her oldest daughter started her periods recently and I asked the younger brother's wife how things were for tidiness. She said she had no complaints. They went to bed on time and kept the place clean. However, they were there for only 2 weeks. They are always tidy at the other houses, I know this from experience too. During Christmas and summer holidays when we stay over at each other's places I have seen the difference in how they are at my place and the other places. Before they moved in I made the younger brother, and my parents-in-law's witnesses to them agreeing to keeping my house as clean as it is and to chip in with chores. If they broke the rules they would be out immediately. She fussed and denied past wrongdoings but said as you wish, Your Highness, sarcastically. The first 5 days were smooth sailing. This morning I found a sanitary towel on top of the bin and not even wrapped properly. That is not all. Her daughter is staying in my daughter's room and she made a mess of the shampoo and conditioner in her bathroom and had left a tampon on the side of the sink forgetting it from last night. Her husband leaves early for work and the kitchen was a mess when I finally got downstairs. I have a curious toddler and I don't want him to pick up a bloodied sanitary towel. I knocked on the guest room and told her to pack her shit and get out. She looked angry and tried to play innocent. She said it was only some blood and to chuck it in the bin if it bothered me so much. I told her no and picked up her suitcase throwing their stuff in it. At first, she wouldn't leave the house saying she was going to wait for her brother as she doesn't take orders from me, but I told her this house belongs to me too. I dropped her and her youngest ones off at my in-laws. A few hours ago her husband came back from work and when I wouldn't let him in he made a scene. He went to my in-laws, but they don't want them there due to Phil illness. When my husband returned from work my in-laws turned up in our driveway with her and her family within 20 minutes. They are still standing outside and squabbling about being let in. I refused to open the door and told my husband if he backed due, he wasn't welcome in our home either. So, the family thinks Ada because I have never liked her and am using any excuse to get rid of her. Update 1. Yesterday my driveway looked like a scene from some Mexican standoff. They were out there discussing the matter while I refused to go out and engage. After 2 hours, yes 2 whole hours they left. They are currently at my in-laws, but they made a promise to return to discuss the matter tomorrow as everyone will be home from work, and that way we could all find a workable solution. Well, at least that is what my husband relayed. When my husband got inside I told him that I would not have them in my house. I told him that he could clean up after them. Which he did. After cleaning up he asked me why I made him do that. I told him I was just as grossed out over other people's bodily fluids as he was, and unlike him, I wasn't biologically related to them. So if he found it unsavory, imagine how shitty I felt in the past cleaning up after them. He promised to buy a new bin and bleach the sink 3 times. Our strategy for tomorrow is that under no circumstances are they coming to live with us. His niece will be made to clean up the bathroom shampoo and conditioner mess. He left that part for her. In the meantime, our daughter can use our shower. We'll see how this turns out tomorrow. Update 2. Yesterday was a long day at my in-laws. We went early to get it over and done with. My in-laws started with the guilt trip first. They mentioned that they would take them in until they found a place, but due to Phil diabetes, it wouldn't be good for his health. I told them to tell their daughter to parent her children so they wouldn't run around amok like monkeys. That way they could stay with them as they have spare bedrooms. That didn't land well with Sil. She went on a tirade about how I've always been jealous of her and that I was trying to drive a wedge between her and her brother. I told her she didn't like her own life, so me being jealous of her and her life was a stretch that required suspension of reality. She asked my husband if he was okay with me telling him what to do with his family as he always stays out of my family's business. She told him to lay down the law and tell me that his sister and her family would stay as long as IT took them to find a new place to stay. My husband was having none of that. He told her that the house was mine just as much his and it was a 2 yes and 1 no deal. Just because I was stay at home now didn't mean that I didn't contribute to buying the house when I was working. The younger brother and his wife said they wouldn't be able to host them as they had his mill staying due to the baby. The older ones mentioned the refurbishments. Both the younger and the older one's wives said that I was making it up about the cleanliness, as she always kept her own house clean and kept their places clean. They told me to suck it up and act like family. I told them I wasn't there to argue about her cleanliness, as I saw what I saw and her brother was witness to it and had to clean it up. He confirmed that he did and that I wasn't making it up. My sil slipped up and said, "Why did you clean it up to her brother?" Because according to her I was meant to clean it up. Either she is the dumbest bitch alive to admit it, or she knows she has the whole family in her pocket. Either way, I made it clear she wasn't going to stay with me, and because she got along much better with everyone else in the family, they would figure out something around their own lives. My husband told his niece that she was old enough to clean up the remaining mess, but she said no. Her father jumped in and said, "She is your niece, but my daughter, don't you dare tell her what to do." It got heated between them, so they both had to walk it off. I told her and her husband that the only reason me and my husband were there was to get money back for the bin we had to throw out due to her sprinkling biohazards around the house. She laughed in my face and said it would never happen. I said, "Fine. I hope you realize that when I threw you out I didn't pack all your belongings." I still had her daughter's Switch, her husband's and her two younger ones' tablets, and some of her jewelry, and a few other bits and pieces, as it all happened so quickly that day. It would all be sold to recuperate my cost. We left, but she was yelling loudly about what she would do to me if I dared to sell anything. My husband has my back and he said, "Go ahead and sell whatever you need to." Later on, they kept texting my husband to do them one last favor by putting up with her for a few months until she got back on her feet. I told him that no matter what I wouldn't agree to let her slobby husband, and her horde of children back in. They texted me too, guilting me about his niece's education. With no place to stay close to her school, she might have to start at another school if they get a rental which isn't in the school zone. I texted back tough luck and blocked them. My husband won't block his parents but was pissed at his brothers for telling him that he was selfish to not take them in, as they were in a hard place in their lives. They did admit it was gross but excused her behavior by texting that maybe I did something to aggravate it. To top this off, the oldest wife left a voice message through her husband's number to my husband's WhatsApp. She said, "I kid you not. You are still okay to watch her 6-year-old on Tuesdays and Wednesdays like usual." I told him to say, "Figure out what the answer to that request is." So that is where we are at now. Update 3. Went to pick up my children, and had to stick around a little longer as a new family is moving to the area. The parents wanted to meet their children's classmates' parents. So we had a small meet and greet. The office brought my husband's older brother's daughter, the 6-year-old, to me, as I am the one that usually picks her up, and on Tuesdays and Wednesdays she stays with me. No one had picked her up, and when her teacher noticed me waiting in the hallway, she asked an office admin to bring her to me, thinking I was delayed due to meeting with the new parents. I told them that I wasn't responsible for her anymore on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. They took her back to the office and they must have called her mother. When I returned home from the meet and greet, my husband said his parents had called him and spoken their mind to him about me abandoning their granddaughter. They also put his older brother's wife on the phone, and she had a shouting match with my husband. Sil I kicked out also had a few words with him. It ended with my husband telling his parents that they had lost the privilege to talk to him for a week and he would only unblock them when they gave him and me a sincere apology. He explained that it was up to the parents to make pickup arrangements when I had made it clear I would no longer provide free services. The Sil I kicked out is staying with her parents for now. Her husband and her younger two and two of the older ones are staying with my in-laws. The other older two are, and the other two younger ones are spread between the other two houses, but they made an indirect threat saying it would be a very temporary arrangement, as she promised it wouldn't take long for her to make her brother see the light. I think I am in for a long ride. Update 4. It's early in the morning and I've only slept a few hours. Don't know if I'll be able to finish this in one sitting. Friday I dropped off my children at school and the older brother's wife was there at drop-off time. She followed me because when I stopped to pick up some bits and pieces she confronted me in the store parking lot. She was apologetic and wanted to make amends. I was having none of it. She was desperate, she said, because if she missed one more week of overtime she would lose the project, as she is the lead and has to stay there to supervise. Her husband can't change his hours and so it has to be her who picks up her 6-year-old. She said it's not defensible to have a grudge against her 6-year-old for a passing comment she made. I told her it wasn't a passing comment. She laid the blame on me for our Sil leaving biohazards in my home. She said she just wanted everyone to get along, and was hoping to de-escalate the situation. I asked her to ask Sil to help her out, and she said she had refused as she has 3 under 7 years and can barely cope with them. I asked her to ask the youngest wife, as she has her mother staying with her, leaving her with time and energy to pick up her children, and they clearly preferred each other over me. She said she wanted to concentrate on the early memories of her own child instead of helping her out with her 6-year-old. I told her to suck it up and find a solution with those she considered family. Then I went about my shopping. In the afternoon when I went to pick up my little one she was there again, and when we got out of the pickup line she followed me all the way home. So I blocked my driveway by parallel parking so she wouldn't be able to park and harass me at my door. I sent a text telling my husband to let me know when he would be home so I could move the car. Not being able to park didn't stop her, as she parked on the side road and came to my house. She rang the bell, but I wouldn't open up the door. She went round the back and knocked on my back door telling me that I couldn't avoid her forever. We were family. I told her through the window as I didn't want her to push her way through if I opened the door, to leave or I would call the police for harassment. She left. In the evening someone rang our doorbell and I went to open it. It was my Mill and Phil. They wanted to come inside and apologize. So I let them in. They started by telling us how much the events of the last few days had affected them. Then they said sorry, and asked M.E. to get back to normal. My Mill said that sometimes you have to put up with some negativity from family as life has a lot of ups and downs. Everything can't be roses and rainbows all the time. My husband stopped his mother and said, then why do critical _lemon and I have to be the only ones on the receiving end of the negativity? When would they hold his sister and the others accountable for their behavior? They tried to guilt trip me into helping out with the 6-year-old as her mother and I had previously been on good terms. I said she lost that privilege as she chose her side. They said would I be able to sleep at night knowing she would lose her job? I said yeah. My husband pointed out how much I had done for her without any financial compensation. They said you were home anyway. One more child that was already potty trained made no difference to me over the past 4 years. I told them it did, because I had many sacrifices over the years for their daughter. I also mentioned that if they couldn't convince the younger brother's wife to help out then they had to forget about coercing me to do it. They wanted to know when I would return the stuff I was holding hostage. My husband said he was holding it hostage, and it would be returned when his sister paid up for damages. My Phil said that Sil would be right to report the theft to the police. My husband said she could do as she pleased. At this point, my husband told them something I wasn't aware of. He said to pass on a message to his sister that he had cancelled the hotel and activities including the horse riding for his niece for the summer vacation / If he couldn't tell her to clean up her mess, because her father had told my husband who did he think he was to his daughter to boss her around, then he felt no need to pay for her specific activities since her father was unsure about their uncle-niece relationship and having the right to teach her some responsibility. This made my Mill upset and she said you ain't done that have you? I thought we would all have a great vacation. He said he had. They tried to make excuses like Sil had a lot on her plate with losing the house, and young children, but I was having none of it. I told them that her life situation was due to her own poor choices and that bringing in a 9th child into the mix was not going to make her situation better. My Mill said every woman had a right to decide for themselves about their family planning. Her body, her choices, and I was not to dictate to her what she should and shouldn't do. I asked her like you are dictating to me right now, by weaseling your way into our home under the guise of an apology? She said no, it was different. She wasn't telling me to have more or less children as she loved grandchildren. The more the merrier. I told her she couldn't expect me to look after other people's children either. The less stress I had the merrier I was, it also comes under my body and my choice. They turned to my husband and asked him if he was really putting them through all of this because we had decided to be less amiable over a silly thing. He said scrubbing down the 2 bathrooms after his niece and sister wasn't the highlight of his life. As they were stuck making excuses and lamenting over us not joining them for the family holiday and by cancelling Sil and her family's holiday and ruining the mood for everyone, we told them to leave politely. On Saturday morning we were woken up by someone frantically knocking our door and ringing the doorbell. It was Sil and her eldest son. My husband told me he would handle it. When he opened the door she tried to push through but my husband blocked her way. She was shouting loudly to let her come inside so she could knock some sense into me. She threw $300 in my husband's face and said to him, is she happy now, that cradle-snatching bitch? I am a year and a few months older than her and she is just over 2 years older than him. She called me a jealous whore, and a few other words. She told him that I had ruined their family by manipulating him. Edit to add, she said now that she had returned the money she wanted him to rebook the vacation and activities ASAP. My husband said it wouldn't happen if hell froze over. He told her to wait outside while he grabbed something. He went inside and put their stuff in a bag, except for one of the tablets that he had bought and he was still paying the insurance for. He opened the door and threw it at her. She was cursing and told him to grow the fuck up. She said she would report him for damaging her stuff. He told her all was caught on camera, and if she wanted to take him to court to really think of her children as they could barely afford a roof over their house let alone a lawyer. Before he closed the door on her face he told her to not step foot on our property again. She left without more drama. My Mill and Phil phoned us and tried to talk some sense to us. My husband and I had agreed to let them see our children under certain circumstances. They said they had grandparent rights. I told them that although I was no lawyer their rights were very limited in the state we live in. If they wanted to have a relationship with their grandchildren they would have to start respecting me and my family. Right now we are NC with the other brothers, their wives, Sil, and her nuclear family. We unblocked them to send a message to them and then blocked them again. If the children of the older brother want to speak to us and spend time with us it's fine by us. The 6-year-old can only come by if her older siblings are there to supervise her on the weekends when we have time to host them. No more dropping by as and when they wish. If they let their parents use their numbers to contact us, we will block them too. While we were sending messages to everyone and they were unblocked, the older one's wife phoned me and said she would pay me $7.50 an hour for the days I looked after her 6-year-old. I told her no, thank you. I'll pass on that wonderful opportunity and good luck to you finding childcare for that amount. She texted me she would compensate me for the last 3 months too to sweeten the deal. I told her no. She begged me to reconsider as she had no one lined up for next week. I told her to figure out her own childcare. She was crying, and I have to admit it was kind of satisfactory. So if I am a bitch for that, I will own it. She will most likely lose her job, but it's not my circus, not my monkeys. The younger one's wife wondered if she could get some help with the baby when her mother went back home, as I had helped the older one. I told her no. That would not happen because I did not want more regrets in life, but when the baby grows up and wants to spend time with their uncle one-on-one, they can come by if we have time to host them. In the meantime, she could ask Sil to help her when her mother left. Sil and her husband are completely blocked. Their children are on NC list as things are very complicated with their parents. My husband and I came to an agreement that we would go LC with his parents. When they do visit us, they have to follow our ground rules. When spending time with us, they can't mention or advocate on behalf of the others, and they can't mention what is happening in our lives to the others. If not, we would go NC with them too. All of this has brought me and my husband closer. I am happy for all the support here, and going forward I think there will be less stress. It feels like a huge load off my shoulders. Now on to second story. Considered asking my unique son to tone down his style to avoid bullying, but fear this might hurt him more in the long run. I'm a single dad to my son, Oliver 10M. He's with me most of the time, and sees his mom every other weekend. He's an awesome kid, creative, full of energy, and he's got his own sense of style that's pretty unique. He loves bright colors, nail polish, and clothes that some people might think are more girly. If I'm honest, I think Oliver might be gay, and I'm totally cool with that. I've always made it clear that whoever he turns out to be, I'll support him 100%. Because of how he dresses and acts, Oliver's had a really tough time with other kids. He got bullied so badly at his old school that I ended up pulling him out and homeschooling him. The school wasn't helpful at all, and it was heartbreaking to see him go through that. He's struggled to make friends, and it kills me to see him feel so alone. Now, he's starting back at school in September, and he's really excited about it. But recently, we were at a cousin's birthday party, and Oliver wore his favorite jacket, which is a bright pink, sparkly one that he loves. Some of the other kids started picking on him, saying he looked gay. I stepped in, got the kids to apologize, but it ruined the day for Oliver. I'm worried about how things will go when he's back at school. I've been thinking about whether I should talk to Oliver about maybe toning it down a bit, especially when he's around new people. Not because I want him to change who he is, but because I hate seeing him get hurt and feel like an outcast. I don't want him to feel like he has to hide who he is, but I also don't want him to be picked on or excluded because of it. But then, I feel like a complete asshole for even thinking about this. I don't want him to think that I'm ashamed of him or that he has to conform to be accepted. I want him to feel free to be himself, but I'm also scared of him being hurt by others who don't get it. So, wth, if I talk to Oliver about maybe being a bit more low-key with his style? Commenter, don't do it. Kids will still bully him, and all he will remember is that you deterred him from expressing himself. Trust me, the same thing occurred in our house. I was trying to keep him from being bullied, but my child felt as though I didn't accept him and that he needed to pretend he was something. Gee, he wasn't. Lots of later life therapy. If he's gay, if he's straight, let him be himself and tell him as long as he likes his clothes, that's all that matters. Sincerely, the mom of an amazing queer kid. Oop, I get that, but at the same time it is so heartbreaking seeing the same thing happen to him over, and over, and over again. Commenter, Jesus, where do you live? Most kids don't care about this kind of thing these days. Oop, I live in the West Midlands of England. I honestly don't think your point about most kids not caring is at all accurate. I see it every day. Commenter, do not dull his shine because other people don't understand him. I understand it may be coming from a place of protection, but it needs to be addressed with the potential aggressors, not with forcing your son to change who he is. Oop, but when you can't do anything more with potential aggressors. I have done, and will continue to do everything I can. But sadly I can't literally watch his back 24/7, even though I would if I could. Any time he has a comment made to him he breaks his little heart, and it is so devastating seeing him go through that again and again. Update 1. Hey all, it's been about 26 days since my original post, and I thought I'd give an update now that Oliver has had his first week back at school. I can happily say that so far, things are going much better than I'd hoped. Over the summer, Oliver and I had a really important heart-to-heart. I sat him down and told him just how incredibly proud I am of the person he is becoming. I made sure he knew that there is absolutely nothing he could ever do that would change the way I see him or make me love him any less. Honestly, it was a bit emotional, and I even got a bit choked up. I told him that if wearing his favorite jacket, the one that's caused some hurt before, made him happy, I'd stand behind him 100%. But I also wanted to make sure he was prepared. I explained that, while I'll always be there for him, I can't always be around to protect him, and he might have to stand up for himself if kids make fun of him. I made it clear that this doesn't mean he should change anything about who he is, but that he needs to be ready to handle it if anyone says anything cruel. Oliver understood, and we spent the summer coming up with some playful comebacks together. He really wanted to take the jacket with him to school, so we made it a bit of a project, imagining the kind of things kids might say and crafting witty replies that he could fire back with. It was actually pretty fun, and I think it helped him feel more confident about it. Now, back to school. His new teacher knows all about his past struggles with bullying, and she's been amazing. She's keeping a close eye on things and making sure he feels safe and comfortable. It's made such a difference already, and Oliver's first week couldn't have gone better. He's even made a friend, a boy named Sam, and they've really hit it off. They're planning to meet up tomorrow at the wacky warehouse, and Oliver can't stop talking about it. It's been a long time since I've seen him this excited about spending time with someone his age. I know it's still early days, but seeing him come home happy and smiling each day has been such a relief. Thanks to everyone who gave advice and encouragement on my original post. I really took a lot of it to heart, and I think it made a big difference in how I approached all this. Update 2. Hey, I just wanted to hop on and give a small update about Oliver's playdate over the weekend. Firstly, when Oliver was getting ready he wanted to wear all his flamboyant clothes. He asked me if I thought it was a good idea. His friend had seen him in his jacket but he was a little worried how he would react to the full Oliver. I told him to wear whatever he wanted, and if this friend was worth being friends with they would accept him for exactly how he is. This made Oliver smile. He wore his full Oliver fit when we were walking and I could feel Oliver getting a bit nervous. He was bullied so much in his last school for how he was, so I understood why. I held his hand tight and gave it 2 squeezes. This means I love you, something I learnt to teach him from Reddit actually. The friend's dad was with him and he looked at Oliver and gave a little curious look, but apart from that it was fine. The boy said he loved Oliver's clothes. They spent about 4 hours playing, and we ended up eating together. On the way home, I told Oliver how proud I am of the little man he is. I am so proud how he is so willing to be himself, and so brave to continue despite any backlash he gets. I love him so much. This is my final update on this account. I don't know if I'll ever show you these posts, Oliver, maybe in a few years when you're older so we can laugh at how worried I was about you. Your dad is so proud of you. I think you are the most amazing person in the whole world. Even when you drive me absolutely nuts. I am so lucky to get to be your father. I am so lucky you are in my life. I love you.